Welcome to 21st Century Dating Decoded. We're making modern love simple. Get ready to decode your love life. Brought to you by Speed Mingle.
I want you to imagine, just for a second, that you're sitting on your couch after a really long, just remarkably exhausting day.
We've all been there.
Right. And you've got your phone in one hand, maybe a glass of wine or a cup of tea in the other. And you're engaging in this quintessential modern romantic ritual. You know, you are swiping on a dating app.
The endless scroll.
The endless scroll, exactly. And you're feeling that really familiar, just heavy dating fatigue. You're mindlessly flicking past profile after profile. But then you match with someone.
Okay.
And not just anyone. This person seems like incredible. They're perfectly witty. They're incredibly attentive, emotionally eloquent. Every single message they send is just perfectly calibrated to your specific sense of humor.
Sounds too good to be true.
Right. You start feeling that little flutter in your chest, the spark. And here's the really wild part. What if I told you that the person you were pouring your heart out to isn't actually a person at all? Yeah. What if on the other side of that screen you're actually flirting with an algorithm? Or, you know, maybe a virtual assistant sitting in another country being paid like $5 an hour to generate leads for an executive.
Yeah, or even a professional ghostwriter charging $200 an hour to just sound exactly like the guy in the photos.
Exactly.
I mean, it completely shatters the illusion of that spontaneous connection, doesn't it?
It really does.
We desperately want to believe that intimacy is this sacred, unmediated space, you know, just two people finding each other in the dark. But the reality of modern dating is that the space between two people is getting very, very crowded.
So crowded. And that crowded space is exactly what we are unpacking today. So welcome, everyone, to a brand new deep dive for the 21st Century Dating Decoded show.
Excited to get into this one.
Me too. So today's title is Love, Delegated, Inside the World of Proxy Dating. I am your host, your guide, and as always, your enthusiastic resident learner. And sitting across from me is our analytical expert, the person who takes all these wild trends, connects the dots, and uncovers the profound why behind human behavior.
It is fantastic to be here. And this topic, I mean, this is one that fundamentally challenges how we even define human connection.
Yeah.
It forces us to ask what it actually means to be authentic in a digital age. Because, you know, the rules are just completely changing.
They really are. So let me lay out today's mission for you. We have gathered a massive stack of sources for this deep dive. We're talking sociological research papers, deep tech journalism, and viral vernacular accounts, like real stories from Reddit and TikTok.
The ground level stuff.
Exactly, the stuff people are actually saying. Our goal today is to examine how modern singles are just completely outsourcing their love lives.
Yeah.
We're going to explore how generative AI, complex Excel spreadsheets, and, you know, gig economy workers are fundamentally restructuring the architecture of human intimacy.
It's a complete overhaul of how we date.
It is. And we really have to start by looking at the sheer scale of the problem, because the numbers here are what drive the behavior. According to the research in our stack, an estimated 49 million singles have tried online dating.
Wow.
Just sitting with that number for a second. 49 million people all participating in this massive digital experiment.
It's a staggering figure. And to understand why people are suddenly turning to algorithms and, like, virtual assistants to manage their love lives, you really have to understand what that number actually represents psychologically.
Yeah.
And sociologically.
Right.
Researchers actually refer to this as the expansion of the field of eligibles.
The field of eligibles.
Yeah. If we look back historically, your field of eligibles was strictly limited by geography, right? And your immediate social circles.
Like who was in your village?
Exactly. You dated the people in your town. You dated the people you met through your friends or at your church or your workplace, maybe your university. Your options were naturally restricted by physical reality.
Which honestly sounds kind of nice right now.
Well, it actually made decision-making relatively manageable for the human brain. But the advent of online dating blew the doors off that limitation entirely. Suddenly, your field of eligibles is just virtually limitless.
Right. You load up an app and you instantly have access to thousands of people within like a 10-mile radius, which when you say it out loud, that sounds amazing in theory.
Right, in theory.
It sounds like the ultimate romantic utopia. You have so many options.
In theory, yes, it sounds like abundance. But in practice, this limitless abundance has triggered a national epidemic of dating burnout. The human brain simply is not wired to process that level of choice.
Especially for something so important.
Exactly. When it comes to something as high stakes as a life partner, when you're presented with infinite options, it leads to profound decision paralysis. And this has actually given rise to a behavioral phenomena that sociologists call relation shopping.
Relation shopping. I have to say, I love that term, even though it's incredibly depressing when you really think about it.
It is a bit bleak.
It perfectly captures what the architecture of these apps has done to our psychology, though.
It's highly descriptive because the apps utilize a specific swipe logic that effectively gamifies love. It turns the search for a partner into a slot machine dopamine loop.
Just pulling the lever.
Over and over. Think about the mechanics,
Okay.
You swipe, you get a match, the screen lights up, you get a little hit of dopamine, and so you swipe again. The friction is completely removed. But in doing so, it reduces complex, multi-dimensional human beings into, well, flat consumer objects in a digital catalog.
You're just browsing.
You aren't building a relationship in that moment. You're browsing for a product. And the sheer volume of this relation shopping has left daters just deeply exhausted. People are experiencing Tinder fatigue.
Absolutely.
They're swiping until their thumbs physically hurt. They're going on endless first dates that feel like job interviews without ever actually moving closer to sustained intimacy.
Which brings us to this massive historic shift in the industry that just happened, and it completely alters the landscape. If you've been following the tech space, you know that in May 2026, Bumble.
Right, the pioneer of the swipe era.
Exactly. One of the founders of this whole thing, they did something radical. They completely overhauled their platform. They officially killed the manual swipe.
It is a monumental pivot, not just for Bumble, but as a bellwether for the entire dating industry. I mean, Bumble built a multi-billion-dollar empire on the swipe mechanism and on its iconic women message first rule.
Yeah, those were their two things.
And in one sweeping update, they have retired both of those foundational pillars.
It's wild to think about dating without the swipe now because it's become like muscle memory for an entire generation. So what does Bumble actually look like now without it?
It's totally different.
According to the tech journalism in our sources, they've transitioned away from being a manual discovery engine, and they've basically turned into a full-service AI concierge. They introduced this proprietary AI named Bee.
Yeah, B. And to understand why Bumble made this shift, we have to connect it back to that national burnout and the relation shopping phenomenon we just discussed.
Right, the fatigue.
The leadership at Bumble looked at the data, and they realized that the traditional model of active discovery had just become a miserable chore for their user base.
People hated it.
Yeah. It was generating high engagement metrics, sure, but it was generating the wrong kind of engagement. It was producing chronic exhaustion. Users were churning out because they were just tired. So the platform is moving to an architecture they call passive discovery.
Okay, so passive discovery. Let me make sure I'm wrapping my head around this. Instead of me actively hunting for a partner, like spending an hour every night manually filtering through profiles, the app just takes over and does the heavy lifting for me.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
Instead of relying on fleeting visual snapshots where you make these split-second, highly biased judgments based on a single photo.
Like, oh, he's wearing a weird hat, swipe left.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The new architecture is built on deep data syncing. The AI, B, acts as your digital proxy. It analyzes your entire data footprint on the app. Your stated values, your communication style, the nuances of your preferences. And it constructs a highly sophisticated digital twin of you.
And here's where the sources show it gets genuinely mind-bending. Because this AI, B, it doesn't just passively curate a list of people for you to look at. It actually initiates conversation.
Yes.
Or rather, it talks to their AI.
That's the crazy part.
The tech breakdowns describe how B handles the entire small talk phase with other AI assistants before the human users ever even realize a match has been made.
That is the defining feature of this new era of proxy dating. The AIs are negotiating the baseline compatibility up front, machine to machine.
Wow.
Imagine your AI pinging someone else's AI in the background to ask about their stance on having kids or their career ambitions or whether they're a homebody or like to go out on weekends. All of this routine vetting happens in the background.
That's insane.
And Bumble argues that this effectively ends ghosting as we know it.
Wait, really? How?
Because if a match doesn't work out during that vetting phase, the rejection happens entirely at the proxy level. You, the human user, you never experience the emotional sting of being ignored or rejected. You are only presented with the success stories.
You know what this actually sounds like? Listening to you describe this AI negotiating compatibility in the background, it sounds exactly like hiring a real estate agent for your heart.
A real estate agent, I like that.
Yeah. You hire this professional agent, they go out, they do all the grueling open houses, they deal with the haggling, they negotiate the terms, they filter out the bad offers, and they only come back to you with the closing paperwork when it's a guaranteed solid deal.
That is a remarkably accurate way to look at it. The AI is doing all the tedious legwork. It's filtering out the fundamentally incompatible properties, so to speak, and presenting you with a highly curated selection of final, viable options. It is designed entirely to protect your time and your emotional energy.
I hear the logic, and I understand why exhausted people would want that, for sure. But I have to push back here.
Okay, let's hear it.
If we completely remove the swipe to save our sanity, and we let an AI do all the negotiating in the background, aren't we also killing the spark of serendipity? I mean, romance is inherently unpredictable, right?
It is.
It's about chemistry, which isn't always logical. Is replacing luck with clinical algorithmic efficiency really going to spark romance? When the real estate agent brings you the paperwork, it's efficient, sure, but it's not exactly romantic.
That is the exact tension at the heart of this transition. And it's heavily debated in the sociological circles we pulled from. Critics argue exactly what you just said, that by automating the discovery and the small talk, we lose the magic of a chance encounter.
We lose the messiness.
Yeah, we lose the beautiful friction of two strangers clumsily trying to figure each other out. But the counter-argument, which proponents of this technology heavily lean into, is that serendipity on a swipe app was always an illusion anyway.
Oh, interesting.
They argue it was often just a lucky roll of the dice in a highly superficial, visually driven game. By replacing that luck with deep data logic, they claim to be increasing the actual quality of the connection.
So they think it's better serendipity.
Exactly. They argue that the AI can actually create a better kind of serendipity by matching you with someone you might have swiped left on because of a bad photo, but who actually aligns perfectly with your deep core values.
It's a fascinating debate. Are we gaining quality at the cost of spontaneity? But here's the thing. We don't even have to wait for Bumble's app-level AI to become the norm to see this happening. Because while Bumble is officially sanctioning AI proxies on their platform, users have been covertly using AI in their personal everyday dating lives for quite a while now.
Oh, absolutely.
The structural shift has already begun right in our private text threads.
Yes, and this is where the dynamic moves from macro-level matching algorithms to micro-level, highly personal use of generative AI. We're talking about the integration of tools like ChatGPT, Claude, and specialized dating apps like HuzzAI and RizApp directly into everyday romantic communication.
People are just pasting their texts in there.
People are copying and pasting their most intimate conversations into these language models.
There is this brilliant paper in our stack by sociologists Skylar Wang and Isabella Lupi. And they analyzed hundreds of these vernacular accounts, Reddit threads, TikToks, personal blogs from people who actively use generative AI to draft their romantic texts.
It's fascinating research.
It really is. And what I love is that they use classical sociology to explain what this is fundamentally doing to relationships. They specifically lean on the work of Georg Simmel. There's that classic sociological framework, right? Concept of the dyad.
Yes.
The idea that true intimacy is a world built for exactly two people.
Precisely. Georg Simmel wrote extensively about social forms, and he drew a very sharp distinction between a dyad, a relationship of two, and a triad, a relationship of three. For Simmel, the dyad is the most fragile, intimate, and beautiful of all social forms.
Because it's just the two of you.
Exactly. And the reason it's so special is because it admits no audience. It admits no mediator. A romance has historically been theorized as the ultimate dyad. It's a self-contained world of two. The fragility comes from the fact that if one person leaves, the entire world collapses.
Right.
That inherent fragility is what makes intimacy feel so precious and significant.
It's just you and me against the world. No one else knows what we're saying to each other.
Exactly. But the moment you introduce a third party into that dynamic, the dyad irrevocably transforms into a triad. And a triad fundamentally changes the relational architecture.
Because now there's an outsider.
Right. A triad introduces the possibility of mediation, of coalition building, of two parties withholding secrets from a third. Think of a couples therapist or even just a best friend you vent to about your partner. Bringing them in changes the dynamic of the relationship.
But Wang and Lupi argue that generative AI creates a very specific, historically novel kind of triad. It's not the same as complaining to your best friend. They call it the covert triad.
The covert triad.
And this framework is just so illuminating. They identify 3 specific qualifiers that make this new AI triad unique. First, it's covert. When you complain to a friend or go to a therapist, that third party is usually known or at least understandable to both partners. But the AI intermediary is completely hidden from the receiver. Only the person deploying the AI knows it's there.
And that secrecy is paramount to how it functions. The second qualifier they identify is that it's asymmetric. The deploying partner benefits enormously from this triadic support. They're utilizing the AI's vast processing power to craft the perfect, most socially acceptable response.
They have a supercomputer on their side.
Exactly. Meanwhile, the receiving partner thinks they're still operating in a fragile, intimate dyad. The receiver is completely unaware that they are essentially fighting an asymmetric battle against a machine.
That changes the entire dynamic. If they don't know the AI is there, it's not a fair fight. And then the third qualifier Wang and Loopy point out is that this triad is machinic. The third party is a stakeholderless artificial model.
Right.
A human friend has biases, emotional stakes, and their own personal relationship with you. They might tell you you're being unreasonable. The AI has absolutely no emotional stake in your fight. It is a machine simply predicting the next most logical, pleasing string of words.
Which brings up a fascinating psychological quirk in how we interact with these machines. The research points to the can-this-a paradigm. Computers are social actors.
Okay, computers are social actors.
It explains why humans are so quick to treat these machinic models like real confidants, even though we intellectually know they're just code.
The CSA paradigm makes so much sense when you read these Reddit threads. People are deeply emotionally invested in their trumps.
Research shows that humans will mindlessly apply social scripts to computational systems. Even when we know ChatGPT isn't a human being, we treat it like a therapist, a sounding board, a trusted friend. We say please and thank you when we prompt it.
I do that. I always say thank you to ChatGPT.
We all do it.
Yeah.
We ask it for highly nuanced relationship advice. We say, my girlfriend sent me this text. What does it mean? The AI becomes a quasi-social actor, deeply embedded in the intimate fabric of the relationship.
Wait, listening to this setup, this is literally just the classic story of Cyrano de Bergerac. The play where the incredibly articulate guy is hiding in the bushes, whispering the beautiful poetry to the handsome but inarticulate Christian so Christian can woo Roxanne.
It really is.
The covert triad is exactly that scenario. Except instead of a French poet hiding in the bushes, Cyrano is an invisible supercomputer sitting in your pocket generating the perfect text message.
It is the ultimate modern Cyrano scenario. But it raises a profound ethical and relational question. In the original play, Roxanne eventually discovers the truth, right? And the revelation changes the foundation of everything she thought she knew about her love.
Right, and that is exactly where I struggle with this. If you are in a fight with your partner, a deeply personal, intimate disagreement where vulnerabilities are exposed, and you secretly invite an AI into that fight to read their texts and draft your responses, isn't that the ultimate betrayal of that private world of two?
It's a huge boundary issue.
Yeah, even if the AI is machinic and has no emotional stake, aren't you violating the sacred boundary of the relationship by letting a machine read and process your partner's vulnerabilities without their consent?
That is precisely the ethical friction the sociologists are highlighting. Many people argue exactly what you just posited. The covert triad quietly violates the core, unspoken condition of intimacy, the idea that what passes between two people is meant for them alone. By routing your partner's texts through a large language model, you're transforming their private vulnerability into data for a machine. You are breaking the seal of the dyad.
Which brings us to the mechanics of how exactly this AI Cyrano is helping people, because people aren't just using it for fun, they feel they desperately need it. What exactly is the AI doing for them? To explain this, the researchers bring in a foundational concept from 1983 by the sociologist Arlie Hochschild, the concept of emotional labor. Now, originally, Hochschild used this to describe workers in the service industry, right?
Yes, Arlie Hochschild revolutionized sociology when she coined the term emotional labor. She originally studied flight attendants, observing how they had to meticulously manage their internal feelings to create a publicly observable, pleasant facial and bodily display for passengers, regardless of how exhausted or frustrated they were.
The fake smile.
Exactly. It's the disciplined management of feeling to align with a social or professional expectation. But over time, sociologists realize this concept applies heavily to intimate relationships as well. We all do emotional labor with our partners, right? We manage our anger during a fight. We try to summon empathy when they're stressed. We work to show care even when we're tired.
But the research here shows that this AI-mediated condition has done something completely novel. It has fractured emotional labor. It's literally split it into two distinct parts.
This is perhaps one of the most brilliant insights from Wang and Lupi's research. They argue that generative AI does not replace emotional labor. It bifurcates it. It breaks it cleanly into feeling labor and articulation labor.
Let's really drill down on those two terms, because this distinction explains so much of modern digital behavior. Feeling labor is the interior work, right?
Correct. Feeling labor is the actual human experience of generating remorse, feeling deep care, or experiencing vulnerability. This part remains entirely human. The AI cannot feel sorry for your partner. The AI cannot feel love.
It's just code.
Exactly. You still have to do the heavy lifting of the feeling labor yourself. You have to recognize that you messed up and actually feel the guilt.
Right, you own the emotion.
Yeah.
But then there's the second half, articulation labor.
Exactly. Articulation labor is the expressive work. It's the immense cognitive effort required to convert that raw internal feeling into language that your partner can actually receive, process, and understand. It's finding the right words, striking the right tone, managing the syntax so it doesn't sound aggressive. And this is the labor that is increasingly being delegated to generative AI.
The sources have these incredible, highly specific vernacular examples of this from Reddit and TikTok that just bring this to life. We have users in these threads saying things like, look, I knew I was sorry, I truly felt it, I just couldn't find a way to type it out.
Yeah.
That didn't come off as defensive or sarcastic.
Yeah, they're scared of saying the wrong thing.
Or you have people using ChatGPT to draft a breakup text because they are terrified of saying the wrong thing. Or they're literally feeding their partner's cryptic, passive-aggressive text into an AI and asking, like, decode this for me and give me a response that de-escalates the situation. They want to avoid stepping on a landmine.
The recurring trope in all of these vernacular accounts is what the researchers eloquently call inarticulacy redeemed. The user feels very strongly that they own the emotion. They know they're genuinely sorry or genuinely hurt or genuinely in love, but they deeply lack the fluency to express it safely in text.
Right, they just don't have the words.
They feel their own unedited words will just make the fight worse or ruin the vibe. So they enter into a partnership with the tool. The machine supplies the form, while the human supplies the content.
It's like the AI is acting as a linguistic scaffold for their messy human emotions. But what is so fascinating is the procedural form this actually takes in practice. The research notes that because of this AI tool, articulation labor becomes preemptive and rehearsed. What does that rehearsal actually look like for a user sitting on their couch?
It looks like a digital sandbox. Think about the era before AI. If you were mad at your partner, you might draft a text in your notes app, maybe reread it once and send it. Or you might call a friend to vent. Now, users are literally testing their utterances against the AI before the human partner ever sees them.
They're practicing.
They graft a text, paste it into ChatGPT, and ask, how will my partner react to this? Or, make this sound less aggressive but keep the main point. They simulate the entire conversation. They rehearse their emotional expression with a synthetic partner, tweaking all the variables before they ever hit send to their real partner.
It's like emotional quality assurance testing. You are running your feelings through a focus group of one supercomputer.
Precisely. It is an extension of the editorial control we already had with text messages, where you can backspace and rewrite, but taken to an anticipatory extreme.
Yeah.
You aren't just editing your words, you are attempting to mathematically model the future reception of those words.
But think about the scale of this. If millions of people are doing this, if everyone is routing their apologies, their breakup texts, and their vulnerable moments through the exact same handful of large language models, aren't we risking something the researchers call the standardization of intimacy?
We absolutely are. And it's a significant sociological concern. When you ask ChatGPT to rewrite an angry text to sound better or more constructive, the model defaults to a very specific, statistically safe tone.
Very HR-friendly.
Exactly.
It
It tends to produce language that is incredibly smooth, highly empathetic, devoid of sharp edges, and heavily reliant on I statements. It sounds exactly like a therapy book.
Oh, totally.
As one incredibly perceptive Reddit user observed in the dataset, they said, all those long emotional messages my partner sent started to sound identically structured. The danger here is that human idiosyncrasy completely disappears. The messy, unique, sometimes jagged, sometimes weirdly poetic voice of your partner gets replaced by a homogenized, perfectly calibrated, corporate therapy speak.
I feel like a lot of people probably justify this by looking at it like a Hallmark greeting card, you know?
It's a great comparison.
You go to the store, you're looking for an anniversary card. You didn't write the poem inside the card, you didn't paint the picture, but you spent 20 minutes in the aisle reading 50 different cards, and you picked that specific one because the poem inside perfectly matched your internal feeling. You own the feeling, Hallmark owns the articulation. Is AI just a highly personalized, dynamic Hallmark card?
That is exactly the primary defense users rely on when explaining their behavior. They view the AI as just a more dynamic, customizable greeting card. They argue that the intent is what truly matters, and the AI is just a tool to deliver that intent more effectively.
But wait, I have to push back on the Hallmark defense. Romance is supposed to be risky. The whole point of intimacy is the vulnerability of trying to explain your messy, chaotic self to another person. If we use AI to calibrate every single word to be perfectly safe, polished, and therapy approved, don't we lose the beautiful imperfection that makes intimacy real in the first place? Doesn't the struggle to find the words actually prove the love?
That is a profound counterpoint, and it's exactly what concerns sociologists studying this shift. A lot of the force, the sheer emotional weight of intimate language, comes from the fact that it is a struggle.
Right.
When your partner stumbles over their words, when they use a weird metaphor that only makes sense to the two of you, when they double text because they're nervous, that imperfection bears the mark of their true, authentic self. If we iron out all the wrinkles using AI to avoid misunderstanding, we might make communication much more efficient, but we risk stripping it entirely of its soul.
Which naturally leads us to the fallout, because eventually the truth usually comes out. What happens when a partner discovers that this AI Cyrano has been writing their love letters or their apologies? This brings us to the authenticity paradox and the rise of a phenomenon called chat phishing.
The ethical and emotional fallout of this technology being discovered is just immense. We're seeing a brand new phenomenon in the digital dating space termed chat phishing. Everyone is familiar with catfishing, right?
Yeah, pretending to be someone else visually using fake photos.
Right. Chat phishing is when someone uses a plagiarism machine, an AI, to generate deep, intimate, emotional texts, and the recipient feels deeply deceived and violated upon discovering it.
We have this absolutely brutal story from the Reddit corpus in the research stack. A wife discovers, months after the fact, that her husband had used ChatGPT to write every single card he had given her. Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, anniversaries, and not just that, but every single long-form apology text he had sent her after their fights.
It's devastating.
The comments on the thread were just devastating. People were horrified, saying, he used a plagiarism machine to churn out fake love notes.
That specific visceral conflict reveals a massive cultural fracture in how we're attempting to define authenticity today. The researchers point out that society is currently splitting into two distinct, warring camps regarding what makes communication real. The first camp defines authenticity strictly as linguistic authorship.
Meaning, if you didn't literally type the words out of your own brain, it's fake.
Exactly. For this group, the actual labor of expression is tied inextricably to the truth of the emotion. To delegate the articulation labor to a machine is to forfeit the ownership of the act entirely. If an AI wrote your apology, it is not a real apology, end of story. The effort is the apology.
And the second camp is the one relying on the Hallmark defense.
Right. The second camp defines authenticity as emotional ownership. For these users, if they genuinely felt the emotion internally, the tool they use to express it externally simply doesn't matter. They argue that the feeling is theirs, and the AI merely helped them translate it so their partner wouldn't misunderstand or get defensive. They don't see it as deception at all. They see it as trying their absolute best to communicate clearly and save the relationship.
But regardless of the sender's intent, for the person on the receiving end, the discovery is usually catastrophic. The research talks about this psychological process called retroactive reframing, and this part is truly haunting.
Yes, and this is psychologically fascinating and devastating. When a partner learns that an AI has been secretly mediating their intimate exchanges, they don't just get mad about the specific text they just found out about. They retroactively reframe the entire history of the relationship.
They look back at everything.
Everything. They look back at every sweet good morning text, every deep late-night conversation, every breakthrough apology, and they view the entire history as a fabricated lie. The discovery shatters the foundation of trust because it completely violates that unwritten sacred contract of the dyad we talked about earlier. They suddenly realize they weren't alone in the room.
I want to ask you, the listener, to put yourself in the receiver's shoes right now. Think about a time recently when you were truly terrifyingly vulnerable with someone over text. If you poured your heart out and you received a perfectly empathetic, beautiful response that made you feel incredibly safe and seen, would finding out 6 months later that that response was generated by ChatGPT instantly erase the comfort you felt in that moment? Does the synthetic origin of the words destroy their emotional impact?
The data suggests that for most people, the answer is a resounding yes. Because in romantic communication, the form of an utterance is often inseparable from its meaning. To say I love you is not just sharing information, it is an action. To outsource the saying is to fundamentally alter the action itself. The asymmetry of the covert triad, the fact that one person knows the AI is there and the other is completely in the dark, is what makes it feel like such a profound betrayal of trust.
But the really crazy part about all of this, it isn't just code doing this. If you have the money, you don't need ChatGPT to manage your proxy dating. You just buy a human being to do the exact same thing. Which brings us to the rise of human proxies, the $5 heart, and the ghostwriting elite. Because we are seeing the rise of a full-blown dating gig economy.
The delegation of romantic labor is absolutely not limited to generative AI. We are seeing the massive industrialization of dating through outsourced human labor. The sheer volume of the dating market has become so overwhelming for some that people are essentially hiring a staff to manage their love lives.
There is this audio source in our stack from a YouTube channel called Redbeard Rants. It's this guy cheerfully explaining his dating process. He talks about how he wakes up every day to a spreadsheet of brand new leads brought to him automatically. And these are not business leads for his company. These are romantic leads, women who fit his exact criteria.
Right.
And how is he doing this? He explicitly says he has hired an overseas virtual assistant, a VA, for $5 an hour to manage his dating apps and conduct massive Instagram outreach campaigns on his behalf.
It is the literal application of B2B sales tactics.
Yeah.
Business-to-business lead generation applied directly to the human heart.
Yeah.
It is the ultimate manifestation of Taylorism in romance.
Taylorism, remind us what that is.
Taylorism, historically, is the practice of breaking down a factory job into small, highly efficient, repetitive tasks to maximize industrial efficiency. These users are treating dating as a high-volume manufacturing pipeline. They have separated the executive function going on the date from the manual labor of securing the date.
The Redbeard Rants guy literally says in the video that dating is just a volume game. He tells his VA to filter for very specific things. He gives instructions like no single moms, no tattoos, specific aesthetics, and tells the VA to just mass message hundreds of women. The actual physical and personality specs of the man, the user himself, matter less to his success than the sheer volume of leads his VA can generate for him.
And it isn't just men looking for sheer volume who are outsourcing. We have sources discussing high-end agencies like the Lifestyle VA. These are concierge services that act as a comprehensive dating logistics squad for busy CEOs, lawyers, and executives.
It's crazy.
The VA manages the apps, they set the schedules, they vet the candidates, they even book the dinner reservations at exclusive restaurants. The executive just looks at their calendar and shows up to the date like it's a board meeting.
It's outsourcing the busy work of love. But it gets even more professionalized and expensive than that. There was a deep dive Salon article we reviewed that explored the cottage industry of dating profile ghostwriters. We are talking about registered businesses with names like Pimp My Profile, Profile Helper, and even former in-house writers who used to work for Match.com starting their own boutique firms.
These are highly trained professionals who charge anywhere from $50 for a quick polish to over $200 an hour to craft the perfect, algorithmically optimized dating bio.
$200 an hour?
Yeah. They interview you on the phone, they stalk your Facebook and Instagram to capture your authentic vibe, and they write a profile that is scientifically engineered to project effortless confidence and charm. And this industrialization extends to photography, too. There are specialized dating photographers charging upwards of $875 for photo shoots that are explicitly designed to look like casual, candid snapshots taken by a friend on a normal Tuesday.
It is entirely fabricated serendipity. It costs almost $1,000 to look like you just casually woke up looking amazing at a coffee shop. And then there is the Wingman app mentioned in the research, which takes a different approach to human proxies. It's a platform where you don't even write your own profile at all. Your friends or your wing moms entirely take over your account. They write testimonials about you and swipe on your behalf.
All of these phenomena, the $5 an hour overseas VAs, the expensive ghostwriters, the Wingman app, they point to the profound socioeconomic implications of professionalized romance. When you can literally buy a better digital personality, it creates an artificial advantage for wealthier daters.
If you look at this historically, it kind of mirrors the aristocracy, doesn't it? It feels like the modern equivalent of wealthy aristocrats in the 18th century buying the absolute finest horse-drawn carriage and the most expensive silk ball gown to secure a match at the royal court. They were using capital to buy a romantic advantage. But today, the gown is just a perfectly optimized digital persona.
That is a brilliant historical parallel. The medium has changed from silk to pixels, but the transactional nature of securing a high-status mate remains exactly the same. You are purchasing an aesthetic and linguistic advantage to signal high value to potential suitors.
But here's my pushback to this entire system of human proxies. Think about the logical conclusion of this. If two people meet at a coffee shop for a first date, and both of them used $200 ghostwriters to write their witty bios, and both of them used $5 an hour VAs to do the swiping and the messaging to secure the date, aren't we just watching two PR teams go on a blind date? Where does the actual human connection happen?
And that is the tragedy of the optimized profile. The PR teams secure the meeting, but the actual flawed, unedited, exhausted human beings have to show up at the coffee shop.
Exactly.
The digital promise rarely matches the physical reality, which leads to profound disillusionment for both parties. The ghost-written profile sets an expectation of effortless charm and perfect banter that the real human being simply cannot sustain for more than 5 minutes in person.
Which perfectly explains why a completely different group of people have decided to fight back against this system in their own way. How do normal people without a PR team and without a virtual assistant cope with these opaque black box algorithms? Well, they use spreadsheets. This brings us to the movement of the resistance, the love hackers and their data auxiliaries.
This is one of the most fascinating behavioral adaptations we found in the sociological research. Not everyone is outsourcing to ghostwriters or AI to win the game. A very specific demographic is attempting to regain agency over the chaos of the dating pool by turning to intense data management. We are talking about the love hackers.
Love hackers. And what are they using to hack love? Microsoft Excel, Google Sheets, Apple numbers. They are literally building massive color-coded spreadsheets to track their romantic lives.
The research by sociologist Skylar Wang focuses heavily on young knowledge economy workers, people working in tech, finance, law, data analysis. These are individuals who are highly proficient in data management and optimization in their professional lives, and they are importing those exact corporate skills into their personal lives to tame the wild dating market. Wang calls these spreadsheets data auxiliaries.
Data auxiliaries. I love the academic framing of this. What exactly does it mean in this context? What is an auxiliary to?
A data auxiliary is a personalized vernacular tracking system meant to fill the massive data blind spots of the major platforms. Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, they have massive amounts of data, what we call big data. They know your exact age, your location data, how many milliseconds you linger on a photo before swiping, but they have massive blind spots.
Right.
They have absolutely no idea how a date actually went in the real world. They don't know if you had chemistry. So users build these customized spreadsheets to track the small data, the intimate experiential details that the Silicon Valley algorithms cannot see.
Wang breaks this love hacking process down into 3 distinct steps. The first step is problematizing.
Problematizing is a crucial cognitive shift. It's the moment where the user stops viewing dating as a mysterious, romantic, serendipitous endeavor and starts framing it as a structural, data-driven problem. They look at their Tinder fatigue and say, this isn't a failure of romance or a failure of me. This is a failure of data management. I need a better system to track my pipeline. They view romance as a problem that can be systematically solved with a technical solution.
Okay, so once they frame it as a data problem, they move to step 2, which is tailoring. This is where they actually build the spreadsheet, and the specific details they choose to track are wild.
The tailoring phase is where the contrast between big data and small data becomes stark. The apps track broad demographics to sell ads. The users tailor their spreadsheets to track deeply personal, subjective variables. They log things like intellectual compatibility on a scale of 1 to 10, the flow of the conversation, physical chemistry, specific quirks, or value alignments like the exact number of children they want or their political leanings.
My favorite variable from the research was a user who literally created a column to track, did they smell strange? Because an algorithm in Silicon Valley cannot predict a weird in-person smell.
Exactly. The spreadsheet allows them to capture the sensory, physical, messy reality of the human encounter that the digital interface completely misses.
And then there's third step, sense-making, and this is where the research gets a little bittersweet.
Sense-making involves evaluating the actual utility of this massive tracking effort. And what Wang found is a fascinating conundrum. Despite all this intense quantification, the color coding, the pivot tables, and the data entry, very few users could point to actual behavioral shifts caused by the spreadsheet.
Wait, really? It didn't help?
It didn't actually make them better at dating. The primary benefit of the data auxiliary was purely psychological comfort.
It just made them feel like they were in control of the chaos.
Precisely. The dating market feels chaotic, random, and frequently rejecting. Managing a spreadsheet provides a sense of structure and agency. However, users freely admit that when the meticulously tracked data on the spreadsheet clashes with their gut feeling about a person, they almost always throw out the data and go with their gut. The data ultimately bows to human intuition.
They're essentially running a quarterly earnings report on human chemistry just to convince themselves they are the CEO of their own romance. It's a coping mechanism. But I have to push back on these love hackers by turning every single date into a data point on an Excel grid. Aren't they actually killing their own romantic intuition? Are we losing the ability to just feel if a date went well without having to go home, open our laptops, and check the metrics on a screen?
That is the danger of what critics call technological solutionism. The ingrained belief that every single human problem, even heartbreak, has a technical or data-driven fix. When you over-index on the data, you risk allowing your relational literacy, your basic social intuition, to atrophy. You become so focused on the metrics and the columns that you lose touch with the organic, messy reality of the person sitting across the table from you.
Which provides the perfect bridge to our final, grand sociological conclusion. We need to connect all of these isolated phenomena, the AI proxies, drafting texts, the $5 VAs swiping in the Philippines, the complex Excel spreadsheets, to a much larger, overarching societal shift.
To understand the true gravity of what is happening across all these platforms, we turn to the sociologist Hao Wang, who brilliantly applied a famous theory by the philosopher Jürgen Habermas to the modern online dating ecosystem. Habermas proposed the theory of the colonization of the life world.
Let's unpack this carefully because it ties everything together. What exactly is the life world and what is the system in this framework?
According to Habermas, society is divided into two distinct realms. The life world is the realm of communicative action. It is where spontaneous connection, shared meaning, culture, and genuine mutual understanding happen. Romance, courtship, and intimacy historically belong entirely in the life world. The other realm is the system. The system is the realm of strategic action. It is governed by efficiency, commercial logic, money, power, and algorithms.
So colonization happens when the system invades and takes over the life world.
Exactly. The algorithmic colonization of love occurs when the technocratic commercial rules of dating apps and AI models encroach upon the romantic life world. Communicative action, trying to understand someone, is replaced by strategic efficiency, trying to acquire someone. And Hao Wang identifies three severe pathological effects of this colonization on our society.
Let's go through those three pathologies. The first one Wang identifies is the loss of meaning.
In the colonized life world, love is literally pulverized into math. The renowned sociologist Zygmunt Bauman famously compared modern dating to ordering a pizza online. The gamification and the swipe logic reduce potential partners to consumer objects in a catalog. You aren't building a shared meaning with a human being. You are simply optimizing a transaction. The profound, symbolic, deeply human meaning of romance is lost to the cold logic of the marketplace.
Which leads directly to the second pathology, the legitimation crisis. And the researchers tie this explicitly to surveillance capitalism.
Surveillance capitalism, a term popularized by Shoshana Zuboff, is an economic system that claims private human experience as free raw material, translates it into behavioral data, and sells it. The legitimation crisis occurs because dating apps hold an immense asymmetrical power over users. The apps are opaque black boxes. We don't know how they match us.
The research gives some terrifying real-world examples of this exploitation. A Cupid was involved in a major scandal where user photos were utilized by an investment group, Clarify, to train facial recognition algorithms without the user's explicit knowledge. And Grindr faced a massive backlash for sharing users' highly sensitive data, including HIV status, with third-party advertisers.
This is the dark heart of the legitimation crisis. The platforms hoard your most intimate vulnerabilities, your desires, your rejections, and they exploit them for commercial gain. Meanwhile, they manipulate your behavior to keep you swiping or to force you to buy premium services. You think you are searching for love, but the algorithm is searching for revenue.
And the third pathology caused by this colonization is the identity crisis.
Because the algorithm ultimately controls visibility, who sees you and who doesn't. Users develop what is called an algorithmic imaginary. They try to guess what the black box wants, and they alter their true identities to please it. They pose with specific pets they don't own because they heard it boosts matches. They change their stated hobbies to appear more mainstream. They lie about their age or gender, all to win the algorithmic game. Their identity is no longer self-determined. It is colonized by the metrics of the system.
The research also mentions this haunting concept of the uncontract.
The uncontract refers to the automated enforcement of interactions. In a healthy life world, humans negotiate boundaries through dialogue and promises. We figure it out together. In the system, the algorithm enforces the interaction unilaterally. If you don't meet the physical spec filter someone set, you simply do not exist to them. You are invisible. It bypasses human moral agency and empathy entirely.
I want to ask you, the listener, to reflect deeply on this as we wrap up today's deep dive. Think about everything we've covered. If the algorithm works, if it successfully analyzes your data, utilizes a covert AI triad to draft perfect messages, bypasses all the messy human dialogue, and actually finds you your perfect mathematically optimized match, does it matter that it harvested your behavioral surplus and manipulated your identity to do it? Do the ends justify the dystopian means?
It is the ultimate question of the modern era, not just in dating, but in how we live. Are we willing to trade our agency, our privacy, and the messy beauty of human intuition for the promise of algorithmic efficiency?
As we transition into our final thoughts, we want to leave you with something to really mull over.
Throughout this discussion, we have highlighted the tension around the covert triad, the shock and profound betrayal people feel when they discover an AI wrote their partner's texts. But if we extrapolate current trends, we are hurtling toward a chilling future scenario. What happens when the baseline expectation shifts? What happens when we reach a point where everyone simply assumes that every text, every apology, every witty bio is AI-assisted?
On that day, the covert triad is no longer covert. It's just normal. It's just how people talk.
Exactly. And on that day, a new, much darker question takes its place. The question is no longer whether the words are real or fake, because we will assume they are synthesized. The question becomes whether we, as a society, have collectively decided that real simply doesn't matter anymore. If an optimized synthetic illusion makes us feel good, will we just accept the illusion as the new reality?
That is a thought that will genuinely keep me up at night. Are we willingly surrendering the messy, painful, beautiful reality of human love for the comfort of a perfect simulation? But before we get too lost in the existential dread of the algorithmic future, we have a real-world antidote for you today. If you are listening to this and feeling completely overwhelmed by the spreadsheets, the AI proxies, the VAs, and the dating app fatigue, we want you to put down your phone. We want to highly encourage you to check out the Speed Mingle's concepts.
It's the perfect counter-movement to everything we just discussed today. It is about actively fighting colonization and getting back to the human life world.
Exactly. We urge you to put down the data auxiliaries, close ChatGPT, delete the apps for a weekend, and attend a real-life Speed Mingle event in your area. Go experience actual, unfiltered, unoptimized, messy human chemistry in a room full of real people. Smell the weird smells, stumble over your words, and find someone who likes you for it. And if there isn't a Speed Mingle event available near you, take agency. Contact Speed Mingle directly to become a host or to offer an event venue in your city. Bring the serendipity back to your community. And of course, please subscribe to the broader movement and continue to listen to 21st Century Dating Decoded as we keep navigating this wild romantic landscape.
Thank you all for joining us on this extensive deep dive into the proxy dating world. It's been a fascinating journey.
And remember, the next time you are sitting on that couch, exhausted, swiping through the digital catalog, and you match with someone who is just a little too perfectly witty, ask yourself, are you falling for a person or are you just falling for an incredibly well-trained algorithm? Keep decoding, everyone. See you next time.
Thanks for watching and listening to the Speed Mingle Network.